one of the worst things that you could do as a business owner is to, hold on to the business when you're like in your 70s. Not that I'm in my 70s or anything, but when you've kind of like played your last card and you're still holding on to that game just because you don't know what else to do. I think that's terrible for the business. And, so I definitely don't want to do that for Making Chips. Welcome to Making Chips. My name is Jason Zenger, and this is actually going to be my farewell to you, the Metalworking Nation. This is my last episode of Making Chips that I'm going to be hosting, and I want to. Nick's already crying.
Come on, man.
And I want to give the Metalworking Nation a reason why I'm doing this. I was thinking about this morning, but I've actually spent between 20 and 25% of my life working on making chips, if you could believe that.
Oh, wow.
Of my entire life, I've spent 20 to 25% working on making chips. And, sometimes it's just time to say goodbye. So that's kind of where we're at today.
So now we know exactly how old you are, because Making Chips is 10 years old.
Well, I say 20 to 25% because it took a couple years to get it off the ground and, plan it out and everything. So yeah, it was in the works for a little while, but yeah, here we are. It's going to be, unless you all ask me to come on as a guest, this is going to be my last episode.
Oh, and I'm sure we will.
I'm
sure we will.
It'd be wonderful.
And I'll tell you exactly what I want to talk about. You keep posting about your prosthetics, and oh my gosh, when you get that sorted out and you figure out what you've got, when you've got your final prosthetic solution, I want to talk about that whole story, and maybe even bring on. And, I don't know if you know the manufacturer. I think we talked about it before, but maybe even bring on the people who are involved in designing and building that solution.
Yeah, Naked Prosthetics.
Yeah, that would be great if we could do something like that. I would love that. Yeah, connect me with them.
Paul's got to drop that in. Pro Shop customer. That's why the prosthetics are awesome, of course.
Well, and we've talked about them quite a bit, and I mentioned them on LinkedIn. They actually have an official influencer program, so I'll have to check that out and see what that is all about. So
that's cool.
So
anyway, like an awesome company. That's why they choose Pro Shop.
Yeah, there you go.
And that's why you chose them, right?
Yes, exactly. So as we've kind of announced, we have three partners in the room, Nick, Paul, and Mike, and we're kind of going on to a new chapter of Making Chips. And while I'm, super excited about what the future holds, because this is something that, you and I, Nick, we've been talking about this for years, about the podcast network, about a lot of the services that Making Chips is going to be offering to the metalworking nation, which I'm really excited about. And I think a lot of them are, much needed services that I think people are also going to be excited about being a part of. You get to a point in your life where you need to simplify things. You need to say no to things. And while I love what Making Chips is doing, I kind of realize that I can't be a part of it anymore. And, a lot of it has to do with I have other goals and aspirations that I want to move on to. I've talked about Workman of the Word, and I've talked about Lead Like It's Your Last Day, and I just can't do it all. And I just feel like this point in my journey with Making Chips, I've accomplished everything that I truly ever wanted to accomplish. And I'm super excited to see, Making Chips go on to, what are we on, 5.0, 6.0, whatever it is, and, take that next step. But I just decided I don't need to be a part of it. It's, I can give up that control and, be confident that you guys are going to be able to, handle things just as well without me there. So I'm very excited to be, handing over the reins to you all and to be, moving on and doing something that I've been talking about for a while, because I feel like if I continued on with Making Chips, I would probably always have that as an excuse not to do Workman of the Word, not to write my book, not to do some of these other things that I, plan to do. And I would always have that excuse of, well, Making Chips needs me. Well, Making Chips doesn't necessarily need me.
So, Jason, you probably have, right now, a lot of empathy for the pro athlete who's, still good enough to play, and like still contributing to the team, but he's just like, man, is it my time to retire from this and move on to like, I don't know, broadcasting or whatever, like Tom Brady,
or coaching,
except for you're moving away from broadcasting on Making Chips to do your new thing. But yeah, like, I don't know if you feel that at all in your heart right now, like that kind of tension, like, is it time? And, maybe you feel a little bit of that pro athlete. You remind me of
it's a good analogy. I never thought about it from that perspective. I think the way I think about it is back when Making Chips started, there was no other manufacturing podcast, right? Mm-hmm. And so to a certain extent, we were trailblazing and, kind of like opening up this space. And since then, a lot of other podcasters in the manufacturing space have showed up, and it's amazing. And to be honest, at the time, I remember having these conversations with Jim, and I remember you were always contrary to us, and you were, in hindsight, you were right, because Jim and I, we would see another podcast in manufacturing pop up. We'd be like, oh, what are they doing, copying us? And yeah. And you were like, no, it's fine. Like, people should be doing this. And one of the things that I see, I'm like, I'm really happy to see, like Paul started Machine Shop Mastery, and I forgot Nush's podcast, what she calls
Next Gen, I think.
Next Gen. Yeah, there you go. And, so many other podcasts have shown up, and it's great. And I think that what that has done is it's really opened up conversations about manufacturing that need to be had, and making it more approachable for parents and kids to look at manufacturing as a career. And so I'm really excited about that. But like, from my standpoint, I'd like to be a part of doing something a little bit new and unique. Mm-hmm. And so I feel like I need to move to doing something, and it might not be different and unique for, the entire marketplace. I'm not saying that I'm like the first person, to talk about, how your theology mixes with the workplace, but it's going to be new to me having those conversations. Yeah. And I just feel like it's the right time in order to do that. And
I thought you were claiming to be the first person to write a book.
Yeah, there you go. Definitely not. And I'm not even going to claim to be the best person to write a book. I'm just eventually going to write a book. That's what I was going to say.
I might be the first person who reads your book. And,
I'll send
it might be the first book Mike's ever read, because every time I talk to him about a book, he's like, I don't really read books.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. But I mean, like, even that, like, when I reflect on, I got my MBA, I think it was 17 years ago. If I had known what I know now about, education and how to learn and reading books and, I probably would have never gone that far and made that much of an effort to get that degree. You know what I mean? Because I feel like a lot of that is just what I learned, I could have learned in a book, or I could have learned in a YouTube video. I could have learned on a podcast or in a course for $100.
Sure.
And I just think that education is so much more accessible now, because of, what podcasting brought to the table, that, there's so many different directions that you can go into with it.
Yeah, completely. You've created two communities. You're the founder of like two communities, the Metalworking Nation, we attach that hashtag to it. And then like this community of other podcasters in the Metalworking Nation. Because that's exactly what we have now. I mean, how many times have we done like a cross pollination with someone else? Like Chris Lukey's probably the best example.
Yeah.
And like you really were, I mean, maybe there was other ones. They weren't good enough to like have anyone really know about them. So sorry if I offended anybody there. But like, I think when I found Making Chips, it was really kind of like the only one.
It was the only one when I found it.
Yeah.
Yeah, 2016. I think that we were the only ones at the time. So and now like a lot have popped up, which I think is amazing, and I'm really happy to see that. But you just get to a point where I think that it needs to be freshened up, and part of that freshening up is for me to work on something else. I think that's one of the worst things that you could do as a business owner is to hold, and I've seen it happen, hold on to the business when you're like in your 70s, not that I'm in my 70s or anything, but when you've kind of like played your last card and you're still holding on to that game just because you don't know what else to do. I think that's that's terrible for the business. And, so I definitely don't want to do that for Making Chips. So.
Well, when Nick talks about the community, I think that's the legacy you built more than a show or anything is there's the podcast community, but then there's just all the other relationships and community around it, because, I think it was back when, a couple of weeks ago when we were celebrating the 10-year anniversary of Making Chips. Paul and I had shared online, like my entire manufacturing community is from Making Chips. I mean, I met Paul. I mean, I met you first, and then met Paul, and met Nick, and met all these other wonderful people. And it's beyond just the podcasts that have kind of, I don't know that they've necessarily come out of Making Chips, but they've certainly modeled Making Chips over the years to be inspired to start something, and and they all bring their own value to the market. But I think it's, there's so many relationships and friendships and stuff that go way, way deeper than listening to a podcast every once a week.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think you were a big part of creating that whole environment.
Yeah, it's nice to say.
Yeah.
Thank you.
That resonates for me as well. I mean, obviously, I discovered Making Chips pretty early. I think it was in 2017, maybe late 2016. I can't remember exactly, but I reached out to Jim, and I remember being so excited when I found it. I'm like, oh my gosh, like I didn't know this existed, and listened to many episodes, and then reached out to Jim, and I'm like, we have a cool story to tell, and so came on as a guest, and then we as a company at Pro Shop decided to be a sponsor because it just resonated so much with the audience. And then absolutely, Jason, you were part of the inspiration for me to start Machine Shop Mastery, and and now that's getting incorporated in and becoming part of the Making Chips family. So just huge thank you to you for the vision, the dedication to do that all these years, spend nearly a quarter of the years of your life, doing something of this magnitude. And I can definitely also very much respect, and I love this saying, in life, you can do anything, you can't do everything. And
very true.
Deciding, I think it's a superpower of an effective human, let alone an effective business person, to what to say no to. Because if you get spread too thin, you're just going to be ineffective in doing, anything in particular. And so you're, the change that happened in your life with your heart, obviously is a big wake up call on like what your priority in life is and what you want to do next. And you have things you want to go do. And I definitely respect the idea that you've built Making Chips to place that you can be incredibly proud of it. You've done everything you ever, wanted to achieve out of the original vision of it. And now it's in good hands to go on to the next chapter, and you can move on to something that's now a bigger priority in your life. And, and we can celebrate and, champion you as you move along.
Yeah, I agree, Paul. And I'm also going to be, cheering you guys on as well. I mean, because I really want to see everything that, you all are going to set out to do be accomplished, because I still believe in, the vision and mission of Making Chips. And, one of the things that I went through and, kind of associated with my heart attack, we were talking about this a little bit before we press record, but one of the things that I've realized is that part of who I am, I don't necessarily want to have any other partners in my life. And this doesn't have to do with you guys. This is more of like a character flaw of myself. Like, I don't necessarily want to have any partners in my life besides God and my wife. And it's because I like to.
Hey, I never needed to be that close.
Yeah, exactly. And I don't know what it is, but it's like the way that I've always been since I was really young. I mentioned before that tennis has always been my sport. It was a one-person sport. either Jason loses or Jason wins. And I didn't have to worry about anybody else on the team. Nick, I know you play soccer, very much a team sport.
Yeah.
I think it's a great sport. One of my boys, Henry, plays soccer. He loves it. And that just wasn't my personality. I didn't want to have to depend on anybody else. And I like to be able to make, unilateral decisions and then just move forward and reap the consequences or reap the rewards of that.
Sure.
And I just realized that about myself, as a person. And, I have a hard time, taking constructive feedback from anybody but, my wife and maybe like one or two other people. So, I know that about myself. And I need to, like I said before, simplify things. And that's part of that simplification because I take everything to heart. It's one of those things where, I know that about myself. I'm trying to free myself from taking everything to heart. And it's hard to do that when you're having to balance other personalities, other interests, other motivations and stuff like that. And it just, it causes sleepless nights for me that I just can't afford to have and will choose not to have. And so, for that reason, I'm out.
You sound like a Mark Cuban.
Yeah,
exactly. If Mike makes a post about you, it's going to go nuts. He did a post about Mark Cuban. I think it's got like 6 billion views at this point.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
No, I mean, I think, we were talking a bit before we recorded. I think that self-awareness is awesome. Speaking of like theology, right? The Bible talks about like, hey, not everybody should get married, Yeah. It's a great gift, but not everybody should do it. Well, not everybody should have 4 partners, 3 partners, whatever. Mm-hmm. So, I think that makes sense. And to know yourself is really important. And, doesn't mean anybody's got any ill will towards anybody. We're all going to be rooting for each other. You just made a smart decision for your goals and your future,
Yeah. Yeah.
So.
And this is a conversation that, I could come back on, and this is something that I've talked with my wife about, but we've had this, internal discussion between her and I know this would be the complete opposite of your family's perspective, Nick. And I believe Mike and I believe you and I have talked about this a little bit, but my wife does not like family business. Like she just doesn't like it. Mm-hmm. And the reason she doesn't like it is because from her perspective, she wants, and this kind of goes to like having partners. Mm-hmm. She sees family business as being, a conflict in family relationships. Yeah,
it can be. I mean,
it can be.
It absolutely has been in my life before, for sure.
Exactly, and you're not unique in that. I would say that most family businesses have conflict in their relationships because of those same reasons, because of that, desiring to have, having different perspectives, having different motivations, and all that. You might have, the one, sibling that only wants to work 40 hours a week, and then you have another sibling that wants to work 70 hours a week, and you have to figure out how to balance. But then you have the patriarch who says, well, everybody is treated equally. Well, how do you do that? You know what I mean? And so you have these inherent conflicts that my wife and I have talked about it, and she just doesn't like. Like I always had this dream of I'm going to, start all of these businesses and then, pass them along to my kids. But she's like, no, like I don't want to do that. Mm-hmm. And it's caused me to kind of rethink and put into the perspective of, of partnerships. She said, I want to have our kids, come home for the holidays and not have the conflict that's caused by the family business. Like I want them to come back and have their interests that they could talk about outside of, the business perspectives. And I think that I've had to think about that a lot, but I could see the validity in her viewpoint.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
so can I.
They generally go really, really well or really, really poorly, right?
There's not much in between.
Yeah, I mean, I think Nick's example, Matthew Nix is an example, of them going really well. I've shared stories with you guys about my stint in family business, and it went really, really poorly.
Yeah, and I've had both in the same life.
Then you'll probably have more.
Yeah, I mean it is a bit of a roller coaster, but holy cow, you talk about like taking things to heart, Jason, right? You do it with partners, and then like what happens when these partners are your family members too? Mm-hmm. It's like an extra layer of like trying to figure things out. But I will say there's no right way for all people, but I will say, man, it definitely it definitely helps you figure out how to like resolve conflict better. I mean, because you love your family, like, they're not going anywhere. You know what I mean? So I think sometimes you see this with people who like haven't been in a relationship in a really long time or whatever. Like when something starts to suck or like they start to like be bothered or have conflict, they just kind of ghost whoever and then move on, right? You can't do that with family. You have to figure out how to work through and resolve stuff. And for me, I mean, I'm not a very mature person, but I've gotten so much more mature because of like dealing with the family business and stuff. So I definitely see how that connects to like, wanting partners in a business or not wanting partners in a business. For sure.
Yeah. I know of a company who used to be a client of ours, and they're not a client of ours for very good reasons, but like the siblings actually got into a fist fight out in the parking lot, in front of the entire staff over business disagreements. I mean,
it happens.
Like, it happens. And then I also know families where, half the siblings don't talk to each other because of, business disagreements. And it's sad that they can't work those things out. You know what I mean?
We used to call it the tornado drill. So like when Willie, our patriarch, very much an entrepreneur, like I started this thing, it's going to be my way. And then my dad's very much a business guy, has sometimes had to challenge some of that. They would yell at each other so loud, like you couldn't shut enough layers of doors to make it so not everybody could hear. So I would call for the tornado drill. Everybody under the desks with their head between their knees. But that was like decades ago now.
What was the TV show with the motorcycle, Orange County Choppers?
Yeah.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, that father and son got along really well.
Yeah, no, exactly.
Yeah, so I mean, we could explore this topic, in much greater detail at a later time. But it's, I've had to change my perspective as far as that goes. And I think, I used to be, as driven as the next guy, but I think, definitely what happened to me, has caused me to just change my perspective about things and say, I need to kind of be a little bit more open-handed with some of these viewpoints that I have, and really think about, well, what do I want? What do I want for my life, as opposed to what do I want people to, to think about me, that, he created this great business and he's got his kids working in it. Well, is that the most important thing to me? And, kind of realize that it's not. So.
And it's something we can pick up and like keep it going, and I don't know if I've ever really had a chance, or had plenty of chances, but I don't know if I've ever spent the time to really thank you for this. I mean, I was on the mower listening to the podcast. I got to know you guys. I was like, I don't want to be a guest. I want to be your partner. And that took like a year of us talking about that, and it happened. And now I'm like, they got all three of you guys. It's like family. I mean, we've been through so much and for so long, and I benefit so much from all the lessons of
we've had a lot of
MakingChips. But all the lessons of MakingChips, like the community and what I've learned from everybody, not just the other hosts, but like everybody that we've had on, the business connections. Like, I don't sit there and promote my stuff very much, but like it just, people listen to the show and then it starts one thing leads to another. And I mean, it's just been incredible. It's such a blessing in my life, and I'm excited to see where it's going to go. Absolutely. But like, really, I mean, there wouldn't be a MakingChips if it wasn't for your idea and you and Jim showing up on a radio show doing AM radio, So I love it.
And I definitely think, like, Jim and I were probably, before you got involved, Jim and I were probably reaching our kind of our plateau, and we probably would have seen a bit of a fizzle in MakingChips, say like 4 years ago or something like that, if we had continued to just do it, him and I, if you hadn't brought some, new energy to the equation. So, it's definitely, I think everybody comes into this, for a reason, and, you're the part that you played, to help reinvigorate going into, MakingChips 2.0 or 3.0 was, critical to us getting to the point that we're at here. Cause, you can only have so many, conversations like that before you just start to get bored of it.
Yeah. It's hard to like constantly reinvent. But we've got some really cool ways that we're doing it now. Super
absolutely
excited about it.
Well, Jason,
we've always been good at visioneering things together.
That's my favorite thing to do. Yep.
Jason, I've watched, I don't even know how many business transitions over the years, that either I was directly or indirectly involved in.
Yeah.
And I mean, a lot of the things there's a lot of wisdom in all the things you're saying today, because, you know, people do hold on too long, or they, you know, Paul and I know Paul and I are going to record a podcast soon about, and I'm not saying this is the case, but, you know, the situation where someone holds on too long and they throttle the growth and the opportunity, right? Or I mean, there's just so many things that can go wrong, and it's not necessarily aligned with what they're doing anymore, but they can't let go because it's their baby. And, you know, I remember, so like my first business venture that ended okay, but not the way I would have wanted. And, you know, there was, it was easy to get into all the things that went bad. I remember a mentor of mine, he told me one time, he goes, look, you know, you had a baby and you fostered it and you grew it, and then she went off and married someone you don't like, you know, and that was a real, you know, because you still want it to be successful, but you don't like what they're doing. So I hope your baby's marrying somebody you like.
No, I do. I believe that Making Chips is in, you know, amazing hands, and I think that, you know, what you guys are going to be doing in the future is going to be just really great for the metalworking nation, and I'm excited to see it happen. But, you know, what you said kind of reminded me of one of the things I want to give my dad credit for is, you know, he never had that control problem. Like he was ready to let go and hand off the reins to me at a very young age, I believe, and he was never very controlling of me. Even, you know, when it was let's see, it would have been like 2012 or 2012 or 2013 when I came to him and said, hey, I want to use some of Zenger's money to start a podcast. He was like, well, can you get all your other stuff done? I was like, yeah, of course. He's like, okay, go ahead. And, you know, most business owners, because I only owned 2% of the business at the time. Now I own 100%. But like most business owners at the time, whether it's their son or not, would have been like, that's stupid. Like you don't need to waste your time doing that. And I'm not gonna support that. And so, you know, I need to give my dad credit for, you know, just being open to the possibilities of allowing me to, you know, be flexible. It's kind of like, you know, I saw this story played out where there was a guy he was probably 10 years older than me, back when, you know, Zengers, we had like a showroom business, a counter. We don't have that anymore, but, you know, machine shop owners used to come into our counter and buy cutting tools and stuff. And this guy, he would come in, he was about 10 years older than me, and he wanted to introduce CNC machining into his family's business. And the dad kiboshed it all the time. And even they would come in separately. Like, it was funny because back in the day, Zengers was like this, you know, it was like the local bar. Like machine shop owners would come in and they just yuck it up with my dad for like 30 minutes at a time. And, you know, so you get like, they all be like, you know, spilling the beans on, you know, what was going on in their lives and their businesses. And the dad was like, no, I'm not going to do this. See, it's a fad. It's gonna pass, you know. And, you know, meanwhile, they ended up going out of business, you know, because they just couldn't adapt to the changing times. So it was really pivotal for me to see that happen, you know, in real time. So, you know, as a business owner, you really need to know when to let go.
So how many episodes have we done? Does anyone know like exactly how many episodes we've done?
450 or something.
I mean,
yeah, close to 500.
Oh,
I don't know.
So, a ton. Okay,
a lot. Yeah.
Hours and hours of prep and hours of actual recording and everything else, even outside of the recordings. And we leave every episode with like a main takeaway, you know. And maybe this one doesn't have like as much of a lesson necessarily for the manufacturing leader, although I think there was plenty in what we talked about today. What, Jason? You get the honor of like the final takeaway, you know, of all all of Making Chips. 10 years of it, you know, what would be your final takeaway after everything we've learned from doing Making Chips?
Yeah, I think this goes back to community and education. It's like we all need to come together with our best ideas as a community and share them with each other in order to make this manufacturing community better. Mm-hmm. This is, you know, this is a growing industry. We don't have enough people. We don't have enough shops out there. what else can we do in order to help each other to succeed, but to share our ideas and to share our education. So I think that that's just, podcasting is just a very natural medium for bringing those two things together, the community and the education. And I think that it's just done a world of difference in my life, in order to teach me about what it means to be a leader, from other great leaders that are out there. And I just think that, people need to look at, how can I make myself a better leader? How can I rely on the rest of the community in order to solve these problems? And I think that this medium is such a great platform for being able to do that. And I've just been so thrilled to be a part of that ride and to meet so many great people through it. I only wish that, other people had the opportunity. I kind of feel special in that I get to, interact with all the best minds in the industry, not because there's anything special about me, but because I just have this platform for being able to share these things. And I really hope that the Metalworking Nation is, kind of like along the ride with me in order to do that. Mm-hmm. And it's been just a really special journey for me.
Awesome. Yeah. Just to expand on that, have more conversations.
Mm-hmm.
We had so many conversations, and if we could leave the audience with something, just have as many conversations as possible. Call the shop down the street where you kind of know the guy and be like, hey, let's get lunch once a month.
Yeah.
Know your vendors. With Mike and Paul, how cool is it that the founder of the company that has your ERP system that runs your whole company? Have more conversations, know more people. It's really easy in our world to get stuck in your shop or in your office and just focus on your machines and making your parts for your customers. But I would say it is worth it. It is real work to go out and grab lunch and just not have a specific agenda every time, but just to build this community.
Well, and this is an industry you can do it.
Yeah.
There's a lot of industries, your competitors and they're not going to go to lunch with you.
Mm-hmm.
This industry will, and they'll share information on podcasts, and they'll come do shop tours with you, and they'll loan you some thread gauge that you don't have. And, this whole industry will do that. And it's certainly been beneficial to me coming in from the outside, not knowing anything, and starting my educational journey through making chips and meeting more and more people. And Jason, I like how you talked about, it almost feels unfair, right? I feel like my cheat code is that, through making chips is I get to learn about things first, right?
Yeah, I know. Isn't it
get
awesome?
to talk to all these, brilliant minds in the industry and learn about things before anybody else learns about them.
Mm-hmm.
This industry fosters it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I'll also say, I think that this podcast and others like it help promote that openness.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
that culture within the industry, that it is very collaborative and people are willing to come up and share their best ideas and how they've grown their businesses and, freely share that with others. And just the platform that it exists helps perpetuate the fact that is how it is. People
Mm-hmm.
are collaborative. And I totally agree with your kind of summary, Jason, that being open to learning and learning to be a better leader, which is ultimately the biggest skill in growing a business, is being a great leader, is something I've definitely learned from all of my guests and many of the guests on Making Chips. And I know that there's hundreds and likely thousands of others that have learned those same lessons, because I hear about them, in comments or in direct messages about, thank you for this conversation you had. And so it's a really positive thing that you've helped create here for our industry, for the Metalworking Nation. And thank you so much for that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and I'm excited where it's going to go. Yeah, and for lack of a better platform to go to, if people do want to follow me now that I'm not going to be a part of Making Chips, I do have my personal website, which is jasonzenger.com, and I think that's where I'm going to be posting most of my new Workman of the Word episodes and Lead Like It's Your Last Day. So if somebody wants to go there in order to keep up with me, please do so.
Jason,
you got three people right here that'll be checking.
Yeah, there you go.
Jason, as we wrap this up, I know you've talked about it a few times on social media, and then also on a couple of podcasts. But why don't you just go ahead and give everybody a quick overview of the Workman of the Word and Lead Like It's Your Last Day, just in case they haven't heard that.
No, thank you, Mike. I appreciate that. So Workman of the Word, this is an idea that I've had for several years now, to explore what it means to bring your theology or your study of God and study of Scripture into the workplace. So the problem that I'm trying to solve is I feel like people have this bifurcation in their lives where they have, okay, this is my Sunday values, and then these are my workplace values. And I don't believe that you should bifurcate your life in that manner. So I think that you need to bring your whole self to the workplace in a way that's not going to be awkward, but in a way that's, very natural. And then how can you use a lot of this wisdom in order to help you make decisions? So I never felt like I was qualified in order to have those discussions, just because I've never had any formalized teaching. And, if you look at the book of James, it talks about how teachers are going to be, I don't remember, Nick, if you can help me with
basically
this.
Basically, held to a higher standard.
Yeah, they're going to be held to a higher standard. Thank you. And so when Mike Ruby came to work for the company, he was formerly a pastor at a megachurch. He brought that qualification that I didn't feel like I had. And so him and I are going to be the way it's going to work is we're going to be doing a short podcast on like a weekly or biweekly basis where it's going to be Mike and I talking about a topic like that. And then I'm going to be doing like a very short YouTube video about that same topic, like a solo video. And so we're going to be just, putting it, bringing it to the community, what we put into practice at Zenger's in order to create like what we believe is a happy and thriving workplace, regardless of what the worldview is of the people that go to work for us. Because we're not exclusively trying to like hire Christians or anything like that. We're trying to hire the best people for the position, regardless of their worldview, but with the understanding of this is the way that we lead and manage the company.
Yeah.
Cool.
And then Lead Like It's Your Last Day. That is going to be a kind of like a step-by-step process and a journey of where I went from making a decision to move from Chicago and the things that I had to put into practice when I moved from Chicago, where my business is, to Tennessee, and then where I hadn't done everything that I needed to do, but then when I was abruptly taken out of the picture by my heart attack, the things that I wish I had done and the changes that I made through that journey. And that's going to start off, I think, as a podcast where I'm going to have discussions with people, because to be quite honest, I want to hear other people's journeys that they've went through, either struggling with separating themselves with the business, separating themselves from the business, or success from separating themselves from the business, so that I can use that as just more stories to tell when I eventually write that book.
I mean, what a good book for manufacturing leaders. We talked with Mike Payne and Mike Fritz did the first episode of By the Numbers about how the value of your business when you're able to decouple the owner from the every day-to-day operation. So tune into that and then eventually read that book, because it'll make your business more valuable. Yeah,
I think I need to talk to Mike Fritz. I don't know him, but it sounds like somebody
super good dude. You love him.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
I've heard that.
Yeah, he's awesome.
I've heard that.
Well, so as we wrap up, I mean, I do want to plug something that I'm super excited about for MakingChips too, because and it's like right along the lessons of this episode. When you have more conversations and when you build a bigger community, you understand problems better and more deeply. And like, this is a problem solver industry. Like, if you're a good problem solver, you'll be good in this. And so after however many episodes we've done, 450 something, it's like the number one problem everybody has is people, finding the right people, getting the right people in the right seats. And so, I mean, just the skills gap is so played out and talked about all the time, but it's just super true, right? So very soon we will be probably at the end of January, we'll be launching hiremfgleaders.com, and you will have a guided tour, a guided service where we have a recruiting partner, and Mike, Paul, myself, we'll all be involved in the process of connecting that manufacturing shop owner or that guy who's hiring for a role with the right person, and very similar to like a recruiting service or a headhunting service or whatever, but just with the three of us who have been through this and hired people and probably know someone in that network, second, third degree connection, whatever. And so I'm really excited about it because I know it's going to make a big impact. It's something I've been using. The recruiting partner that we're working with is someone I've been using and having tons of success with. So really excited to be able to offer that to our audience. It is their biggest problem.
Yeah, I think that's great, and that's going to be a valuable service for the metalworking nation. So I'm excited to see the successes there.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Jason, I haven't said it enough, but thank you.
No, thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Jason.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, I'm sorry that, this was such an abrupt, departure, but I felt like it was just, I mean, Nick, I've been talking about, like when to make a departure, and, it's something that I needed to say, okay, now's the time. I couldn't I couldn't keep going on and,
Jason, it was almost a lot more abrupt than this. It was very close to being as abrupt as possible.
Yeah, a year ago it was almost really abrupt.
No, and I mean, just to close, one more little story. You guys were working through that right away, right after all that happened, and it was like, hey, we got to transition you out of making chips. And Mike and I talked, and we were like, well, let's wait. Like, we can do this without him for a while, and then when he's in a better position to make that decision, we'll have him do it. And it took you till now, and then you did. So, good decision. You made the right decision, and you didn't do it in like a stressful state. You did it when you're in the mindset to make that decision.
Yeah, I think it's going to work out well for everybody. I mean, you guys are going to do a great job with carrying on making chips, and I'm really excited to see the successes. And I just hope that y'all invite me back someday.
Yeah,
you don't have to invite Jim back, but you got to invite me back.
We're gonna have a who's the funniest competition. So.
There you go.
No, maybe we'll do that for like episode 500. We'll have the whole gang back.
That would be good. That'd be fun.
Yeah,
cool idea.
It'd be good. Yeah, a nice live episode. That would be fun. I'll get back on my feet by then.
Well, we always ask everybody to share. That's the number one thing we want people to do, is share the episode. If you felt there was anything in here that you could take away, I certainly think there was. So share it with your peers. That's how we build this community. Rate and review it, of course, but mostly just take some time to reach out to Jason. So jason@zengers.com is his email, or find him on LinkedIn. He'll be active there as well. And just say thanks, please. Just say thanks. Maybe give him like one of the best things you've learned from him in his whole time. And just wish him well. That's all we ask of our community on this one.
Yeah, that is.
There you go. Thank you.
Jason,
awesome, Jason.
Final sign off. It's on you.
If you're not making chips,
You're not making money.
Bam.
Bam.
Bam.